Hello, I have a build video for you today, something I've been working on for a while. But isn't there supposed to be like a montage at the start of these? I'll leave timestamps below so you can skip to wherever you need to. Our entire build relies on us standing still. Because of our armor choice, we're getting a 50% damage boost and lightning damage if we stand still. And that's not really a problem because of our spell choice. The two spells, the Arc Torrents, they have a pretty decent range. Anything within like 15 feet will get one-shotted by your spells, assuming they're not badasses. Which even then, if Blast Gasp does proc, it will one-shot them. So yeah, standing still really isn't an issue. This build is honestly kinda lazy, and that's fine by me. If you're looking for a good lazy build that has amazing mob clear, and the potential to one-shot a lot of bosses, this is definitely the build for you. It's just incredibly satisfying to watch 12 enemies instantly blow up in front of you. You're here for the build and the gameplay, so let's not waste any more time. I'm going to go over each of the skill trees real quick, so try and keep up. Our action skill is going to be Ambihectress, quote-unquote, action skill. Our first skill is Spell Sniper. We take 5 out of 5 for obvious reasons. Spell critical hit chance. We take 5 out of 5 for Font of Mana. This is additional spell cooldown rate, which is nice. We take 1 here for Glass Cannon, 30% spell damage, which is huge. We skip over Magic Bullets, Mage Armor, and Just Warming Up, because they all use guns and guns are for pussies. Except for Mage Armor. What Mage Armor does is whenever you cast a spell, you restore a portion of your ward, which we don't want. I'll talk about that when we talk about our ward. For here, we take 4 points to move down the skill tree in Prestidigitation. What this actually does is, if you didn't know, reload speed does increase how fast you can throw Furior weapons, which we do use to stack Hydras. And our last skill point in Spell Shot, we take high thread count. 3 extra stacks of spell weaving means a ton more damage. Our second class is going to be Graveborn. Our first skill is going to be Faithful Thralls. We take 3 out of 3 here. This is going to be one of our biggest damage increases in this build. We take 2 in Essence Drain just to move down. 3 out of 3 for Sanguine Sacrament. This is our main source of healing. We take 2 in Dark Pact just to move down. We take 5 out of 5 in Stain the Soul. Essentially, this is just a flat 28% increase in your damage. It converts 28% of your initial hit to Dark Magic, which is huge. It does get boosted a little bit, if I'm not wrong, by Dark Pact. But 8% on top of 28%, that's not a whole lot. We take 3 out of 3 in Dark Hydra. This pairs really well with Faithful Thralls. Whenever we get a kill, we have a chance to spawn a Hydra, and each Hydra will increase our damage by 9%. Moving down, we take Ascension, 3 out of 3. So each time we get a kill, we can increase our max health, which no one cares about, but also increase our spell damage up to 10 stacks, which means 60% extra spell damage. We take 1 out of 1 in Lord of Edges. This is just a really nice skill. Whenever you're at low health, you'll get increased damage and damage reduction. This pairs really well with our ward. We take 5 out of 5 in Blast Gasp. This is going to be our boss killer. If this procs on both our spells, you can say goodbye to the boss. This is what does our big boy damage. Even though we're not increasing our ability damage, which this does scale off of, it's still pretty essential, killing bosses. Our last skill point goes into Morham's Blessing. Every time we cast a spell, we activate all our kill skills, which is Dark Hydra and Ascension, which is huge, since we're going to have low spell cooldown. For our hero points, just put it all into Strength and Dexterity. You want as much crit damage and crit chance as you possibly can have. The other points you can really put whatever. Wisdom does help with that dark magic damage over time. You don't really need it. Intelligence, we'll put up to 20%, just in case we have any downtime, which is we have very little. If you're struggling with survivability, put it into Constitution. Attunement doesn't matter because we're using Ambihectress, which doesn't count as an action skill. I'll put the rest of the points in Wisdom. Now that we're outside, let's talk about our equipment. I'm going to go over our enchants first. I'm going to leave a link in the description showing a table by Bad Karma that shows you every enchant that you can put on every weapon. For our first enchant, we want on spellcast increase elemental damage. Our second one is on spellcast increase lightning damage. Our third enchant, on spellcast increase dark magic damage. And our fourth one, on spellcast increase damage dealt by 15%. Additionally, for our fifth enchant, since we're using Ampihexrus, I'll put it on screen right now. You want that enchant because of that extra ability damage, which does scale off Blast Gasp. And now for the equipment itself. We're going to be using a Furior pistol, one that spawns Hydras when we throw them. This is going to be our main source of damage because we're going to stack up Faithful Thralls as high as we can. For our melee weapon, it doesn't matter. Ideally, you probably want a Goblin Pickaxe just for the passive. Whenever you pick up gold, you get increased move speed and spell cooldown rate. If you don't have that, just take any melee weapon with a good enchant. Ideally, the 4 enchants that I showed. For our rings, we don't actually have the best rings. This one's pretty good, but what we're really looking for is this ring specifically. What its effect is, while ward is not full, which it never is for this build, the effects are increased by 100%. If this ring was swapped with the other one, it would be pretty much perfect. We're using this one just because of the spell damage, and it rolled 2 god tier stats, spell critical hit chance and spell critical hit damage. If you're trying to min-max, farm for this ring, and try and get spell critical hit chance and spell critical hit damage, but honestly, good luck. Any rings will work, so I wouldn't fret over that. When it comes to jewelry, purples are just good enough. Speaking of purple, here's our amulet. You'll want to go for lightning damage and either Graveborn or Spell Shot power. For the 2 stats it can roll, look out for all damage dealt. Additionally, you can look for status effect damage, but this build doesn't really rely on status effect damage. It's literally just about blowing enemies up. If you want a better amulet, I'd try and roll for this one. I didn't get good stats on it, so that's why I'm not using it. But it's the 2 effects on the bottom that you want. Mainly the last one. Companion critical hits increase Fatemaker's critical hit damage by 30%. That would be massive for us. But any purple amulet works, which is why I'm using the one I'm using. For our ward, we're using the Cursed Wit. You can find it in the beginning of the game when you fight Rivula. Alternatively, you can use one of the rune wards, mainly the one where you stand still and you get 20% increased lightning damage. The rune ward is mostly for mobbing. When it comes to bosses, you'll want to use the Cursed Wit. And the Cursed Wit pairs really nice with the Lord of Edge's skill. The way it works for the Cursed Wit is whenever a ward gets depleted, 1, it can never refill because of Glass Cannon, and 2, whenever we cast spells, we don't recharge it. Meaning, we always get the effect, which is 17% damage reduction and 100% increased damage. This is what lets us nuke bosses, as we're going to stand right on top of them and just cast 2 spells and say goodbye. This ward is much easier to get than the rune ward, but either one works. Now, here's where the bread and butter of this build comes from. We're going to use the Diamond Gauntlets. Aside from it being the absolute ugliest armor in the game, it's pretty good for what we're trying to do. While standing still, gain 50% increased critical hit chance, dark magic efficiency, and lightning damage. Which the whole point of this build is being as lazy as possible and standing in one place and just watching everything blow up. We got a pretty god tier roll with almost 30% spell damage and 18% all damage dealt, which is absolutely insane. There really isn't an alternative for this armor. I mean, you could probably get away with using an amalgam or a corrupted plate mail just because we're boosting up dark magic damage, but when it comes for this build, this is the armor you want. Now for what our build revolves around, is 2 Arc Torrent spells. I'm talking about the ones that call down lightning bolts, like it says on the bottom. Not the ones where it's hold to cast and you shoot little streams of lightning out. You want the ones that call down massive lightning bolts like this. Each spell can hit upwards of 6 enemies, I believe. That's the max I've seen. So an entire screen that's close by, say 12 enemies, gets absolutely nuked. This is where the laziness comes in, as we're forced to stand still because of our armor. But that's not really a problem because of our reward, which we get the 17% damage reduction, and Lord of Edges. Additionally, because we're casting so many spells, our Sanguine Sacrament is definitely going to keep our health up. What makes these spells so good, besides the insane damage they can output and the multiple enemies it can hit, is after you're done casting, while you're charging up for your next cast, if you see in the bottom right, we're already back to full charges. This means we nearly have 100% spell uptime. Whenever you do have any downtime, which is pretty rarely, just cast out your Furior and start stacking up Faithful Thralls. By the time that's done, you'll probably have 2 stacks of each spell, which is crazy. Since these crabs so generously offered to be our test subjects, you can see that whenever you cast a spell, it just deletes everything on screen without fail. The only exception is badasses, but if you can get a Blast Gas 2 proc, you will one-shot most badasses. This is what makes the build so good, because when mobbing, you don't have to rely on Faithful Thrall stacks. Your spells will carry you, and they'll just insta-kill every mob. The Faithful Thrall stacks are only there for bosses, and that's how you get these insane quick kills. Now that I've discussed our build and our equipment, let's show off some gameplay. I forgot to mention, all the gear obtained for this build was gotten through the Chaos Chamber. For your Furior pistol and your melee weapon, just grind out vendors. I find that much easier than doing Chaos Chambers. For everything else, you do have to do Chaos Chambers, or just get lucky as world drops. So yeah, and on screen now is the list of all the gear. We can do a quick obelisk run. This is a perfect example. We have 2 badass enemies right here, and if we stand still, they get deleted. We have a nice group of enemies, and if you see, that was what, 3, 4, 5? 5 lightning bolt strikes? And that's per spell. We have 2 spells, and here we have the monstrous shroom. Let's wait till our spell shot stacks go down. Show you that you can still crank out damage without stacks. We're at 6 stacks now. Let's see if it one-shots. And it still one-shots. And you saw that was over 500,000 damage. And that's without any Faithful Thrall stacks. And yeah, that's the build. Just stand still and do this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments.